guys. Happy Wednesday night. It's your host, Wes Seiler, here for the Breaking Conservative. I hope your week is going great. It's starting to warm up here in Florida where I live, so we've got all kinds of plans that we're starting to make. We've got family coming down and friends coming down. Everybody is starting to take off masks and stuff, even at work. And it's just really exciting. A lot of good news coming our way as we start to come out from this. The CDC is finally dropping guidelines and all that type of thing. So let me know where you live, what your situation is, if that's the same for you. I know in some other places it's still pretty stringent, but down here in Florida, we're starting to love life again, and it's really exciting. There's a lot that's going on with politics right now, a lot of different topics that we could have picked from, and I love getting into what's going on the day-to-day basis and which politician is saying which dumb thing, or what issue is the hot button of the particular week that the news cycle is chasing down. That's really fun to talk about, but every once in a while, I love to go into some deeper topics. I love the philosophy of conservatism. I love how much richness there is to it. And I feel like we get so wrapped up on the day-to-day sometimes that we don't really get a chance to go into these things. And thankfully on this channel, as well as some of the other channels that we work with, including Saving Elephants with Josh Lewis and In the Trenches with Cal Davenport, and the guys that we have on our Sunday show, and Chris and Kyle and Megan, we get into some of the philosophy with it, but this show on Wednesday nights is a chance to be able to go straight into whatever topic we want and just have a dialogue between me and you on whatever topic that you want me to discuss. And every now and then, I just kind of pick something that matters to me and get to tell you about it. And that tonight is this concept of the permanent things. This is something that you won't hear on Fox News. You won't hear it on CNN. And you won't even hear it on most conservative podcasts. They'll be telling you, 50 different reasons why liberals are wrong, and, why we should vote for this person or that person or whatever. But rarely do they get into some of these deeper concepts like the permanent things. This is a term that came from T.S. Eliot and the poet, and Russell Kirk wrote about it, who was a great conservative author. They use it a lot of times in their works. But if you don't have the time in your life to be able to comb through some of their books, relax and be able to kind of soak it in, you may not have ever heard of it. You may not get a chance to do that. I know I've got 2 kids that are running around my house, and a wife who works full time, and I'm working full time, and all this kind of stuff going on. So, it's not something that I even have a chance to reflect on as much as I'd like. But having this conversation is a great way to bring that back up and to think about the times in my life when I did get to explore this. So we're going to get into that tonight. So I guess the question that I would have for you is, think about in your life to get started on this, and ask the question, is anything permanent? It feels like we live in a world today where that question isn't asked, and if it is asked, the answer might even be no, because you think about how transitory life is, how we're constantly moving, we're on the go, and we're changing, we're getting older, our kids are getting older, our relationships are changing. We have people in our lives who come and go. We're all facing, at some point, death, and it seems like that's the only permanent thing, or to paraphrase Franklin, death and taxes seem like the only permanent thing in our lives. And so we're constantly focused on everything else that isn't impermanent. And so the idea that there is nothing permanent at all, I think, has permeated into American life. And so everything is up for grabs. And it feels like that in elections too. It feels like whether it's Joe Biden or whether it's Donald Trump, everything in our society, its future, what America means, virtue, freedom, all of these things are up for grabs if we vote for the wrong person, or if enough people from the other side vote for their guy, and then that person gets in office, they can destroy everything that we've built to accomplish. And so there's this constant stress in our lives because it seems like everything that's important is temporary, is transitory, is easily removed as dust. And so we're constantly worried that it's going to be taken from us. And so that's kind of how we feel. Sometimes I feel that way in American life because it's so busy. So we focus on things like this, right? I made a list of what politics tends to be about, is when you talk about it or you think about it. We're always focused on money, right? Taxes, how much the government's spending, how much we're having to spend to fund the government. money that's going overseas, money that's not, money for this program, money for, student loans, or money that's thrown for unemployment. We're constantly talking about money. We're constantly talking about the services that we get for that money. And we're constantly talking about our country in this transitory stage, as if our country, might end tomorrow, or our country is transitory in nature, and everything that is America could be gone just like that, right? That's what we focus on, and to some extent, there's some truth to that, right? There are things that come and go. There are changes. Your tax rate does go up and it goes down. The services do come and go. Do we make this decision on where we spend our tax money? And there's aspects of our country that can change. Our country looks very different than it did 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and definitely 100 years ago. So there's an argument for that. But then there's an argument for the permanent things. And when we talk about the permanent things, what we mean is that there are some aspects of existence that are just part of existence, that are ingrained throughout the universe. And this is kind of like a foreign concept if you've never heard, of it before in American daily life. And it's different than the perspective that we kind of operate on a day-to-day basis. Is we constantly think about the decisions that we make. I choose to go here. I choose to be with this person. I choose to spend my money on, one thing or the other. I make these choices in my life, and I'm the sum of those choices, right? That's kind of how we see it. That's kind of the modern view, is that where it's all about the choices that we make, and that's who we are. But the permanent things is this reflection on no matter what choices you make, no matter what you call yourself, no matter how you feel about yourself or other people, there are certain things that just are. There are certain aspects of the universe that you could never change, no matter how hard you try, no matter whether you're the most evil person on the planet, you're an Adolf Hitler, or whether you're the kindest person on the planet, a Mother Teresa. No matter those extremes, there are things that even those people couldn't change about the universe, about existence as such. Those are the permanent things. A moral code. You can think of it this way, that there's something that's both within and above humanity. And I love reading books about quantum physics and string theory and all these type of things that talk about the idea that the universe is connected in ways that we don't fully understand, that there's dimensions of reality that we can't even perceive, right? That's where science is going and has been going for decades. And it kind of proves that, humanity is part of this larger picture. We're in this painting, as it were, of existence, which means that even though we're different than so much of the rest of what we see, we're still part of it, right? We are still made from the same type of stardust that other things are. We are still composed of strings, if you believe in string theory, right? And so even though we can do things that a gorilla can't do, even though we can create beautiful buildings and, works of art and all kinds of things like that, there's still limitations that are natural to us. There are still roles that we have to play within existence and that we are essentially prescribed, which means that we have limits to our capacity. And this is like the most anti-Disney thing you'll ever hear, right? And my kids are constantly watching Disney movies, and they've gotten better recently. But I remember being a kid, and it seemed like every movie was talking about how you can do anything that you set your mind to. You can absolutely take over the world, like you can do anything that you set your mind to. And while there's an empowerment that comes from that, and there are amazing things that you can set your mind to, the permanent things would say, yes, but there's also natural restrictions to that. And, when we hear that from a modern sense, it makes us feel like, well, hold on, you are limiting my choice. You're saying I can't do this? Well, I'm going to prove you wrong. Like, that's how we are trained to think of the word limits, right? We think more of rights and freedom and choice. But this may not be a bad thing. And that's what I want to kind of explain to you is when Russell Kirk and T.S. Eliot and other people talked about the permanent things, they didn't talk about them in such a way as, hey, this is a real bummer, dude. There's a ceiling that you can't pass. They didn't talk about it that way. They talked about it as this kind of liberating force. And that's what I want to kind of explain as best I can here in the next 5 or 10 minutes, is why it was. And the first thing that the permanent things do is it counters modernity's concept of humanity as conquerors above all, right? You go back to Descartes, the philosopher, who said, I think, therefore I am, right? My existence is because I think I'm self justifying. Because I have a mind, then I exist. Whereas the permanent things would tell you, no, 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 you were created or you evolved within this universe that pre-existed you, and your thought was given to you. You inherited that. You received that from your parents. You received who received it from their parents, all the way up to the originators of existence, right? Is that you have this gift of life that was given to you. It wasn't because you thought that you are, it's because your life was given to you that you are. And because of that, you find yourself in something bigger than you. And so, if you're a Christian like me, you think about how in the Bible it talks about God giving the earth to Adam and Eve to be able to subdue and to be stewards of. But he didn't tell them to destroy it. He didn't tell them they could do whatever they want. He established a moral code that they had to follow, right? Which means that while he gave them stewardship, he didn't give them complete sovereign control to do whatever they wanted to do. And therefore, they were within a system of ethics from the very beginning. And so, if you apply that here, you can think of humanity as being separate from the rest of existence because we're sentient, because we have a will and we have these choices and we're able to do so many incredible things. But we're not above all of existence, even though we can change it in so many different ways. And I'm going to fix my camera here. There's some movies that kind of capture this, right? These are some of my favorite movies, and there's just an examples that hopefully drive the concept home. Is you have movies like Avatar and The Last Samurai and Matrix, and maybe you've got some other ones. And these movies, what you have is you typically have a person who would be considered a modern, who has our philosophy on a day-to-day basis, and they find themselves in a world in which they can make a difference, but they also have to conform to some of the ethics within it. And in doing so, they don't actually find their choice limited. They find their life freed, right? So think about The Last Samurai. I've shown videos of this before, talking about honor, and Tom Cruise, his character in this is struggling with his PTSD and his guilt and his alcoholism and all those things, and he's made these choices to come to Japan, and yet he finds himself in this foreign culture, and it starts to rub off on him, and he starts to become a better, like more full person who's making all of these noble choices, and he's connected to other people, and he's no longer just this radical individual doing whatever he can to run from his pain. He's actually a more free man who has a family and has a cause to fight for. The same story in Avatar, same story of a guy who's struggling with losing his legs, and then he finds himself in this code, with the blue aliens and all that, but they start to teach him how to actually adapt their culture to his life, and it makes him better, makes him more liberated and peaceful. And even with the Matrix, right? He probably wouldn't anticipate that, but if you think about it, is that this Neo guy is just kind of like drifting along in existence in the beginning of that first movie, and then he starts to find his role and his place, but he has to learn how to fight, within the Matrix world. He has to learn who's in charge and who's not, and how to make a difference. It's this thing of encountering this permanent structure and adapting to it, and then being freed to thrive within that. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. Is peace is found in the journey, according to the permanent things. Is that it's not something that we create in our own self. It's not something that we can just make a choice to feel good, right? True peace is found within the journey of adapting ourselves to the structure and embracing the permanent things. You see that in those movies, and I think you see it in life. And I guess this is why I'm talking about this tonight, is I feel like America as a whole is becoming a land without peace. You see that everywhere. We're concerned about Hamas and Israel right now. But you know what? There's a war that's here within America, and maybe it's not being fought with rockets and and terrorism and all that kind of stuff, but it's still being fought as you see increasingly people don't have peace in their lives, even though we have so much stuff, right? It seems like almost nowhere do people have peace. And I think to some extent, while I disagree with liberals on almost every issue, I don't project any turmoil onto them, and I think we are, as conservatives, doing that a lot. It's a lot of times we're projecting that sense of being dissatisfied or being angry, being frustrated, or living without peace, and saying, well, you know what? what am I doing wrong here? And saying, you know what, the people who are destroying America, it's their fault. And if only they were gone, if only they were gone, everything would be fine. And I think that's the lie that we can kind of fall into. I had a professor in college who used to say, if we took all the liberals, put them on a boat, and sent them all over to another continent, Africa or whatever, immediately conservatives would start fighting amongst each other. They would start calling each other rhinos and trying to push out libertarians or whatever, or neoconservatives would immediately start fighting each other, right? Projecting that turmoil onto other people. And so, as we kind of look forward, what are some things that we can do to take a step back from that, to stop projecting turmoil onto other people? We still disagree. I disagree with liberals all the time, but I don't do so with the same vitriol and anger that you might see from other conservative people who do podcasts and things like that. And it's because I'm constantly trying to do these things. I'm constantly trying to uncover what is my true nature. What was I put on this earth to do? What are the fundamental things that I can fulfill? What is a life well lived? And a lot of times that leads you to things like family. It leads you to sacrifice, to service. It doesn't lead you to fame and fortune and all these things, but it can lead you to peace, right? And in doing so, you can uncover your identity. Identity is not something that, again, I just create out of thin air, right? And I think that's why so many people struggle with choices that they have to make today, is because they don't know, which school am I going to go to? Which job am I going to do? Who am I going to date, right? Like, how many kids do I want? All these choices in life, it can be overwhelming. And so you've got to uncover your true identity. How was I constructed? How was I made? And how can I become a balanced person? And in doing so, you embrace your place. And this is something you almost never hear in American discourse. We don't talk about the word niche. We don't talk about roles. We don't want to hear anything. We don't want to hear anyone tell us what our gender role should be, or what our lot in life should be. That's for me to decide, right? Is our constant thing. And there's some truth to that you have to have a willing acceptance to this. But the counterpoint to that is that your place is not something that you can arbitrarily just create. If you pick up and you just move to a different location, and then all of a sudden you feel lonely, right? Like, and you don't want to feel lonely, but you do. Maybe that's, humanity's way, or your nature, human nature's way of letting you know, hey, you just cut ties with something that was important, right? And now you're going to have to build it up again, right? As you can run all over the earth and still not have a sense of place, because humanity was born to invest and work with people and have relationships and trust and all these things. And if you try to escape that, you won't find an alternative that's satisfying in any way. And so instead, what you do is you say, okay, I'm going to embrace my place, whether that's here or somewhere else, or that I need to make a change or whatever. But I know that I fundamentally need a sense of place. The last example is, one of the things that we know about human nature is that we need to have some level of work to have purpose in our lives. I've listened to both conservatives and liberals talk about this, is that if we ever got to a place in our society where people didn't have to work in order to live, if everything was so automated that we didn't have to worry about working, we were all on some type of universal basic income or whatever, and money was just coming in your check, people would still want to work. I had a friend of mine who, he was making so much money on the stock market that he never had to work any type of labor for the rest of his life if he didn't want to. He could just keep his stocks going. And he still chose to work because he said, I needed something to do, with my life. I needed something to do on a day-to-day basis that made me feel purposeful. Recognizing that can be scary. Like, why do I need this when practically I don't? But embracing it as, you know what? Let me find something that gives me purpose. Let me do something. Recognize that about myself and human nature, that I do need to work on a regular basis in order to have purpose. Embracing that instead of running from that is a great example of the permanent things and those aspects of human nature that we all share. So that's what it means. And when you focus on that, it kind of just it changes your perspective. It takes out some of the vitriol and anger in politics. And I think if we could do that often, if we could, attend to the impermanent things when you have to. I mean, every day we have to get up, we have to take a shower, we have to get ready, we have to go, do all these things that are arbitrary tasks. We have to eat and all these things. But if we can focus and cherish on the permanent things whenever we can, whenever you can take just a few minutes and realize, hey, listen, This too shall pass. Let me focus on my nature and what I need to do as a human being. If you can take just a few minutes and recognize existence as such, it can really help calm you down in the storms of life and in the stormy society that we exist in. So that is the permanent things. Um, I love talking about it. I love getting into these deep concepts. So let me know what you think. Feel free to post some comments on the page. You can message me directly on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, as well as our website, theberkinconservative.com. Our email's on there, theberkinconservative@gmail.com. And let me know what you think, if that matters to you, if you find that convincing in all way, or if you don't, if you think that that's bogus for whatever reason. Let me know. Be happy to talk about that. We do have our regular lineup coming up on Sunday. Those shows are really taking off. So you've got Refounding Fathers. It's going to be on Sunday night at 8 p.m. Central, or 8:30 p.m. Central. And then we're going to have Conservatism on Tap, per usual, 9 p.m. Central. A lot of fun. Love having your comments. Love seeing the debates on the page. So keep those going, and I will see you guys this weekend.